Welcome to Box Out Banter on November 9th. Chris Okamura joining me as always. Me, Jordan Christmas. Come on, Jordan.
What's up, Chris? Ready to get this started. This is our first episode, man. I'm excited. I'm very excited about this.
And an interesting season to start with.
I know, right? It's kind of like a time lag. it's so weird getting we're preparing for the draft in mid-November, but that should have happened back in June. We had a champion in October, and now we're having a really quick turnaround for the NBA season. Now it's going to be starting on December 22nd, which is kind of fast, but hey, what better time to start a podcast than in weird times, I guess?
I guess so. That gives us something to do, right? So you brought it up, so we'll just go right into it. So yeah, December 22nd is the tentative start date. December 1st is going to be the training camp date. 72-game season. Drafts on the 18th, so that's next week. And free agency is going to open up either slightly before or after. We're not quite sure on that yet. I think that's something they're still agreeing on. So I wanted to get into some quick numbers for people that don't understand. The reason why there's a quick turnaround time is because delaying it to January or February, where a lot of the players wanted to start, would have cost about a $500 million to $1 billion deficit.
Yep.
Missing Christmas. Christmas is such a huge day for the NBA. And so for them not to have that is kind of going to be a huge thing. So they needed to push it forward. They didn't want to lose the spot to the NFL either, because that could have been a possibility that they'd lose a lot of ratings and lose a lot of leverage moving forward.
And they were trying to fit in a 72-game season before the start of the Olympics in July. So there is also that to factor in also.
Right. So kind of the big thing that we're going to get into with free agency and with the draft is all this stuff going on with the CBA and with the cap. So really quick, again, we're trying to get through all this kind of logistical stuff before we get into the really cool stuff. The NBA had a $4 billion loss from no venues and no fans over the last half of its season. So that's a 40% revenue loss of BRI, which is basketball related income. And so basketball related income is what determines the cap. So the CBA right now is a 50-50 split between the players and owners to split that basketball related income. And so the cap projection for this season before COVID happened was going to be around $117 million. And then it was going to go up another $5 million to $122 million. The season after that,
basically just go up for the rest of the CBA. But now it's capped at 109 for this season, and there's a minimum 2% increase on the cap for the rest of the CBA is how they're trying to mitigate it now.
Right. So basically they're keeping it a flat cap. It's not a fake cap, but it is a manually adjusted cap, meaning by the salary cap rules. So again, salary cap is based directly upon BRI, the basketball related income. So by the rules of the CBA, the cap right now should be around 85 to 90 million, which just isn't feasible. For it to drop off that much over the course of one season. So the NBA and the owners are manually inflating the cap back up to where it was last season. So it's keeping it flat and stable. So it's the same cap that we had last year. And then they have agreed with the union that it's going to go up 2% annual growth for the rest of the CBA.
Yep.
So that's pretty fair, I think. It sort of gives teams a lot more leverage because there's no way. I mean, obviously teams like the Lakers, the Celtics, the bigger franchises are perfectly fine with the lower cap because they're going to pay the luxury tax anyway.
Yeah, right.
But for smaller teams, I think
like the Charlotte Hornets, OKC,
or even something like the Milwaukee Bucks, right? Milwaukee Bucks have been an organization that even though they are a championship caliber roster, they have been sort of hesitant to spend.
Yeah, had to sacrifice Malcolm Brogdon to avoid that, pretty much, or trade him away.
Right. So having to shed an extra $20 million in salary cap over the course of one season is not feasible for them. So it could cause a lot of problems.
Yep, and it it's interesting because I've been thinking about, this quick turnaround of a start date. And I mean, at the end of the day, it is all about the money, right? I mean, the players can hem and haw about it being a quick turnaround and stuff, but nobody wants to lose out on that much money and then potentially give the owners an out in the current collective bargaining agreement. So then they could negotiate a new one and basically tilt the basketball related income back to their side. Because remember, in the 2021, before the 2021 lockout, the previous basketball related income split, I believe, was 53-47.
Right. So the owners have been slowly knocking it back down over the last 3 to 4 CBAs.
Yep. And then, so that was a huge sticky point, and the players worked so hard to get it to basically get it to a 50-50 split. And it was kind of in jeopardy when they were talking about bringing the season back in the bubble in Orlando. There was a big risk of them opting out of the CBA, and then if the season didn't continue, and it seemed like they were in that same situation again where they would have taken a huge financial hit. So I think there was, at the end of the day, incentive on both sides to get this done. And while the top 4 teams, the top 4 conference finalist teams, may be kind of screwed, to put it bluntly, with this quick turnaround, a lot of teams had 9 months off. Teams that were eliminated in the first round back in September, got extra time off. So it was going to be hard to justify going to a Martin Luther King starting date on January 18th, as fire as that would have been given the times that we're in right now. Right. It was the players had to look out for themselves here. And I think that at the end of the day, both sides had to come to the table and say, hey, let's just, do the December 22nd date.
Right. So the way that they're kind of working around this is they're going to work around the schedule and try to make it more like a baseball schedule. So trying to make sure that you're playing, instead of playing the Lakers playing the Suns, 4 times a year over the course of the year, they played all of their games in Phoenix at once, playing it more like a series. So there's less travel there. Yeah. Which means it kind of sucks for teams coming to LA because you'd have to play all of your games against the Lakers and Clippers back to back, which is horrifying.
And it's just ample time for people to get sucked in by the LA nightlife.
Right. So that could be a problem. But I mean, otherwise, I mean, they're doing all they can to sort of fight positive tests and lower travel times.
Right.
The thing to note here too is that players are going to lose, I think, 1.08% of their salary for each canceled game. There's a force majeure provision in the collective bargaining agreement, so that if the game isn't played, that money is just lost, because obviously the game wasn't played.
Yep.
The way they're kind of fighting that is through escrow. So right now, escrow happens. It's not a new thing. The escrow happens in the NBA right now because of just as a safety precaution. So 10% escrow that could go up to, I think they're negotiating from anywhere from 18 to 25% escrow. So doubling or going over double the current escrow amount. Basically what it means is that the NBA holds a percentage of the players' salaries. And so players get game checks. And then you basically, percentage of that game check goes to the NBA, sort of like a tax. And then at the end of the year, if there were no problems or no cancellations, cool, you get all that money back. But if something does happen, then that money is given to the NBA or to the owners, and then whatever percentage is given back to the players. So it's just a protective thing to make sure that the players don't eventually, at the end of the year, owe money.
Right. I also wonder with the expected cap now that is going to be basically a flat rate of 109. One, you brought up Milwaukee earlier, but like small market teams like that who have a star player and are who have the pressure to win now, they lose a little bit of leverage in terms of offering a max contract. Like Giannis's before the stoppage, before the pandemic, Giannis's projected supermax was going to be something like a 5-year, $250 million contract or something like that. Now it's more around like the 230 225 range. And look, I would love to him and haw about multiple millions of dollars as if I got a pay cut, but it is a leverage point, right? And also, I wonder how it's going to affect free agency this summer, because and I guess we could kind of transition into that if you want to, but
it gets to the point where there's not a ton available this summer.
Right. Yeah, and so I was looking at it yesterday, and really the only teams there's two teams with projected max cap space of more than $40 million. That's the Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knicks. And then the rest of the teams that have cap space, I believe so Detroit's projected cap space would be around 30 million. The Heat would be 21. They're obviously not. I imagine they're going to do 1-year deals this year and hold off on Bam Adebayo's extension because they are playing for the big fish in the 2021 free agency class.
Right.
But then you have Charlotte and Phoenix, and those aren't with the exception of the Suns, who I have a lot of stock in. A lot of these teams, it just makes me wonder how many 1-year deals we're going to see from players who were expecting a big payday this summer. Like, you look at the series Montrezl Harrell had against the Nuggets, where he was basically just eaten alive. And granted, he had some family stuff going on and had to go in and out of the bubble and things like that. He kind of wasn't the same player. But after what you saw from Montrezl Harrell and how he can be exploited and how big men like Anthony Davis or Jokic can just eat him alive, are you really going to pay $18 million a year for Montrezl Harrell? Like, I imagine a lot of these players who are looking at a big payday this summer are probably going to take 1-year deals with contenders, because I don't think veterans like, let's say, Paul Millsap or Tristan Thompson, for example, they don't want to go to the Knicks or to the Hawks or the Pistons, maybe sign a 1-year deal with the Heat, or maybe you're a believer in Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton like I am, and so you want to take maybe less money to go play on a up and coming team. But I think this could be a boon potentially for contenders this summer that can't spend any more money, that don't have cap space but have exceptions. They could get creative with trades, et cetera, et cetera. It just seems like it tips in the favor of contenders a little bit. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I totally agree. So I broke down a lot of the free agents into groupings. So there's like kind of the big guys that we know are staying. So like Anthony Davis, Brandon Ingram, even I put Christian Wood, Davis Bertans in that argument as well. Jeremy Grant, like these are all guys that I expect to stay with their respective teams.
Yep.
The interesting ones to me are the overpaid guys. So
a lot of player options could be taken.
Right. So like Gordon Hayward probably should take the player option. There's rumors that he wants to leave. So he's set to make $34 million this season, still on his max deal.
And no one's going to pay him that if he
his effective value is actually around 15 million. And that's being generous.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, he's still a solid player. We just don't know if he can stay healthy, and he's certainly not the player he was when he was with Utah.
Right.
And so he should probably opt into that deal. Same goes for DeMar DeRozan. He's making $27.7 million this year. His effective value is around 12 million.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously he doesn't want to be in San Antonio. He's a player that I could see leaving, but staying for the money.
Like someone like Andre Drummond, and shout out to my Cavs friend, writer for Fear the Sword, Evan Damerel. Andre Drummond, for example, was on the record saying he's exercising his option to stay in Cleveland, and he's owed $28.8 million. And if he opted out, ain't nobody in their right mind is going to pay Andre Drummond that money in this economy.
No, same thing goes with Otto Porter. I put them all in that same group. He also makes $28 million, but he's not anywhere near worth that amount of money. The person that I put kind of on the fence in that group is Tim Hardaway Jr. He's right around where his effective value is. He makes about 18 million, and his effective value is around 17 million. I could see him getting more and a bit overpaid somewhere else, like going back to the Knicks.
Reunion.
Right. But at the same time, I don't know how much winning is a value to him and being a part of what Dallas is doing. But I also think that Dallas even if he stays with Dallas, they want to also clear their books for the run at Giannis. So I don't know if he would even be potentially re-signed if once his deal is done. So that's also an interesting one. I have Fred VanVleet and Dragic. I think they're hand-capped together. I think they're handcuffed together. I think if Dragic leaves, the Heat can sign VanVleet, but I don't see him leaving.
Yeah,
and I think if Dragic stays, then Fred VanVleet also stays with the Raptors. They're very similar players in the way that they run an offense.
VanVleet has more value because he's one of the better defensive guards.
Right. I think the thing is that the Heat's offense runs so much. It's so predicated off of the pick and roll from Dragic and Bam.
Yep.
So Dragic ran pick and roll 39% of the time with a 71 percentile effectiveness with it, while VanVleet ran it in Toronto 23 or 32% of the time with a 49% effectiveness. So, there's a huge differential there on the offensive end of the court, but then again, like he still provides value on that end while still giving a defensive upside. So I think again that's an option, but I don't see that being the case. The two kind of major groups that I get into with the free agent stuff is I have the shooters, and then I have a lot of bigs.
Right.
So the shooters, I put Bogdan on here because he's not a free agent per se, but he is
restricted.
He's a restricted free agent. So, but there's a lot of value with him and a lot of trade potential because the Kings do seem to be shopping him around quite a bit. I put him in there with Joe Harris and Danilo Gallinari. I have them all in the same kind of group.
Yeah.
I think they all are related to each other. I think Joe Harris is leaning towards staying because why would you leave the Nets when you have Kyrie and Durant?
Yep. It just depends on how much the Nets are willing to pony up for him.
Right. But I think going to your point of it being a contender's market, I think the Lakers, the Bucks, the Clippers are all very interesting for Danilo. And also maybe to make a move for Bogdan.
Danilo literally said that he said a few months back that he would be willing to take less money to play for a contender, and this is back to the contenders market thing. This is why the Lakers probably have the biggest advantage. I know that's something you like to hear because they have one LeBron James, and LeBron is very persuasive in a lot of ways, and players take pay cuts and 1-year deals to go play with him. So if there's a lot of good players, good fitting players in this free agency class. And so if you are someone like Danilo Gallinari, or maybe Joe Harris just, decides to have a complete change of mind. He probably won't, but maybe he decides to, join the Bucks or somebody like that on a limited deal, or he might be too young for that, but it makes your thought, it gives you more options to factor into your thought process calculus. And I think guys like maybe Davis Bertans, as you mentioned, is also somebody that could, maybe he won't get what he thinks he deserves this year, but if he, stays with the Wizards on a 1-year deal or signs somewhere else, then he can cash out next summer. Bogdan Bogdanovic is an interesting one because living in Sacramento, I watched a lot of Kings games, and I'm not so sure. Maybe previous ownership, Vlade Divac, would have probably have done something stupid and par for the course like he always did during his tenure in Sacramento. Maybe he probably would have extended Bogdanovic, but then there was doubt about that because he did things like not pick up Harry Giles' qualifying offer, which it literally cost nothing to do, and you get to retain his rights. But now you're letting a potentially good big hit the market while you're still loaded with, while you're still trying to play Bagley, Costa Koufis, and Rashawn Holmes at center and stuff like that. But Bogdan Bogdanovic is an interesting one, and he's gonna be a comp that I'm gonna bring up later when we get to the draft. But somebody who can play make, somebody who is a good shooter, I think his 3-point percentage isn't as good as it should be because he took a lot of threes off the dribble, but somebody who's a secondary creator, a secondary scorer, somebody who can attack a closeout off of a shifted defense. I could definitely see why the Bucks have been reportedly going for him. Like the reports have been flying out, but I imagine the new Kings front office, headed by Monty McNair, he's a disciple of Daryl Morey and that whole tree. I imagine he sees value in having a player that could do multiple things on the court, more so than Vlade does. And I imagine they're going to keep Bogdanovich, and I think Buddy Hield's going to be actually the next one out. But just players like that, this free agency class is going to be, or how it plays out is going to be really, really interesting. Players are probably going to take, like, how many player options do the Lakers have? I know Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has a player extension.
Yeah, Rondo.
It just seems like this is the summer where more players are going to take that player option because they're not going to make that money back anywhere else if they were to opt out.
Right. I mean, the only way I don't see players taking it is if something happens. Like if the Lakers somehow trade for Chris Paul, I don't see Rondo re-signing. Obviously, I think he's signed somewhere else. But unless something else happens like that, unless a team makes a move where that spot is now taken, I think players just kind of take the status quo and like kind of treat it as more of an extension of last year.
Like if the Lakers somehow pry Serge Ibaka away from the Raptors. Serge Ibaka had a great year last year. He could definitely,
So that gets me into this big talk. So we have Paul Millsap, who you mentioned earlier, Serge Ibaka, who we talked about, Tristan Thompson, Derek Favors, Aaron Baines, Marcus Morris, Marc Gasol, Dwight Howard if he doesn't re-sign, Hassan Whiteside. These are all these are cheap bigs, cheap veteran bigs that you can fit into, like, it's like going to Walmart and there's just bigs, there's bigs on the shelf. There's ones that can shoot. There's
bigs on the dollar discount.
Like, which one do you want? What kind of big do you need? Do you need one that can space the floor? Do you need one?
All I know is I'm putting down the Hassan Whiteside package immediately and walking away.
Yeah, he's a numbers guy to me.
Yeah, and but it goes back to
he's an empty calorie guy to me.
Yeah,
but
he's definitely he's definitely an empty I haven't been a fan of Hassan Whiteside for years. I thought, when he first burst onto the scene in Miami, was like, oh wow, this guy's getting triple doubles and blocks and stuff like that. But then it just seemed like once he got the max extension, you just saw the effort wasn't there, and then the game was just moving past him. He's just too slow, chases blocks. Even with Portland, he was effective in some games, but by the playoffs, once Nurkic came back and Hassan would sub in for Nurkic, it became like the on-off splits were a disaster. And he hasn't been good for the last few years, but there's a lot of discount bigs. I wonder how much Paul Millsap rehabilitated his image after basically he was the catalyst of that 3-1 Clippers comeback after almost squaring up with Marcus Morris in that series, and actually started playing a little bit like the Paul Millsap of old. I don't want to go overboard, but effective. It just goes to show, like, the Lakers, they won the championship going big, and so this is also a good boon for if you're a free agent big man. I imagine Dwight Howard is going to get another look again, whether it's from the Lakers or whether it's from a few other teams. And the guy was almost out of the league last summer. So it's a very weird time, a very weird free agency class and the finances obviously throw a monkey wrench into it, but there's a lot of good bigs. There's a lot of good role players. It's kind of like the draft in a sense. There's not anyone big, talent-wise, like game-changing, franchise-changing free agents or anything like that. But there are definitely players to be had at value to bolster your roster or try to combat the fact that the Lakers have Anthony Davis and LeBron James now basically as the 4-5 center combo. At least, when the playoffs roll around, the regular season, they're not going to be doing that too much. But
we didn't even mention Carmelo. Carmelo's still out there.
I would take a flyer on Carmelo. I'm not going to lie.
No, I think Carmelo, if Carmelo plays the way he played in Portland, where he's not the focal point of the offense, but he knows his role, he knows that he's there to score, and he knows not to kind of demand the ball, and that he's going to be a scoring option. Like he's coming off the bench and he knows what to do. I think he's still a very valuable player.
I know there's debate about whether clutch is real or not. I think clutch is real, but Melo also does hit big shots, and he's not scared of in a very layman Stephen A. Smith term, his palms don't get sweaty when the big shot comes to him potentially, and he made some big shots in the bubble. Like he still got that factor to him too, you know.
No, absolutely, and I think there's also some kind of younger options. Like the one that stood out to me is DeAnthony Melton.
Melton, I love DeAnthony Melton.
I love that kid, and
I have a soft spot for DeAnthony Melton.
He is a solid defender. He's getting way better. He can dribble. He can create his own shots.
He can spot up.
He's a little streaky, but I mean, he's a solid.
But you know,
player.
the framework is there.
Right.
That's why I loved his talent so much. Like that package in particular, so much.
And he fits so well next to Ja. I don't see any reason why the Grizzlies don't keep him. But if he doesn't, I could see a team like the Knicks giving him a lot of money, or at least a decent amount of money, to grow and be a young piece somewhere.
Maybe a potential Phoenix reunion. He was with the Suns for a bit too, and then before they moved on from him. Or maybe Charlotte, help out Devontae Graham, because Devontae Graham is really small. As much as I liked his offensive improvement this year, maybe DeAnthony Melton is somebody the Hornets look at, but then they might be backlogged because of Rozier, Rozier and Graham. Yes, and so
I think it depends on how much you like Graham, and I think we're all
Devontae.
I have a lot of thoughts about their draft position, because I think the Hornets are in the most interesting draft position, and it all comes down to how they feel about their guards. But I mean, we can jump to the draft if you want.
Let's jump in. Let's jump into the draft. So the draft is next Wednesday, right? November 18th. For time's sake, I have my favorite prospects. I did not watch as much college basketball this year as I normally do. Started a full-time job at iHeart last year, and then this year has just been extended, and I haven't watched college basketball enough to the point where I usually do like a mini big board, especially during when my team, the Sixers, were tanking. I was all over it. And then even a few years after, I was all over it, because I loved the 2018 draft. I loved last year's draft before this. But it seems like, I guess you could chime in and correct me if I'm wrong, but it just seems like, for me, this draft class, I don't see very many players that have like that ceiling of being a franchise-changing pick, but there is a lot of good role players, and there's a lot of good, like, not just role players, but role players that could do a little bit of everything. I like players that could do multiple things on the court, and it just seems like there's a lot of that in this draft. But let's get into some of the big prospects. How are you feeling about some of the big name prospects? We'll get into favorite prospects, but what are you feeling about the guys like Edwards, Ball, Wiseman?
Well, before we even get into that, I totally agree with you with the role player thing. The thing that's kind of funny is this draft reminds me a ton of the 2016 or the 2006 draft. Do you remember that draft at all?
That's the Chris Paul draft, right? No, that's not the Chris Paul draft.
So this is the 2006 draft is there's the first kind of top 10 picks to look at were
the Andre Bargnani draft.
Yeah, so Andre Bargnani, they had LaMarcus Aldridge, Brandon Roy, Adam Morrison, Tyrese Thomas, Sheldon Williams. It's kind of a mixed bag in there, right? In the top half of the draft. And then when you look at the back half, you have Randy Foye, Rudy Gay, JJ Redick, Tyler Cephalosha, Ronnie Brewer, Rajon Rondo,
Kyle Lowry,
Shannon Brown, Jordan Farmar.
Steve Novak was he had a good 11-year career in the NBA.
Millsap. Like, you got a lot of guys in there that aren't stars. They hung around for a long time.
Yeah, that's exactly that. Okay, so the 2006 draft, that's a good call by you bringing that up, because that's exactly how I see some of these players. But what are your, I guess, what are your initial thoughts when you think about the top three the lottery in this draft? What are you feeling?
So, hot take. I think
I love hot takes on the first episode. Let's go.
I think Wiseman is what people thought Bagley was.
Ooh.
Like, think of everything people were saying about Bagley when he first came in. He's hyper athletic. He's an active big. He can shoot. He's a flexible, has a handle, can play a little bit of three, maybe a little bit of
Vlade said that he could play three. I don't think anybody in the right mind had him at three.
I mean, but he has guard skill, right? Like, he has some skills in terms of ball handling, outside shooting. He has good touch, all that kind of stuff. I think Wiseman has all of that, and I think he's going to be what we thought Bagley was, at least in my mind. To me, he's the clear top prospect.
Okay, so I agree with that, actually. I know guys like KOC, Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer, have Killian Hayes number one, and I like Killian Hayes. Shout out Lefty Gang. I'm a left-hand. I am left-handed predominant. What?
So am I.
Oh, okay. All right. Lefty Gang here.
I'm with you.
And also James Wiseman, also Lefty Gang. But I agree with you. James Wiseman, to me, if I'm a GM and I know that there is not a clear cut, like, this draft is weird, teams are barely getting to see these guys work out, in his interviews mostly, I would go with the high ups. And I think in the NBA today, I think the latter part of this decade has shown there's multiple ways to win, but everybody talks about, like, last decade was the era of the 3-point shot. The Houston Rockets kind of bastardized 3-point attempts a little bit because of the personnel they had. The Warriors, the Splash Brothers changed the game completely, et cetera, et cetera. But I also think another way to win in the NBA, and there's a great Rob Mahoney piece on The Ringer about this, you got to have a big who's a specialist or a big man who's special. And if I'm trying to take a swing at somebody in the lottery, like the Warriors, I don't know if I would trade out of the number 2 spot, especially if Anthony Edwards is projected to go to the Timberwolves, like a lot of people think.
That's switched in the last couple of days. So the last couple of days,
I did see a report that the Timberwolves also were looking at Wiseman, but I don't know how much I believe that, because you know how it is around that time where people can just feed reporters lies or not lies, but misdirection and smoke and misinformation and stuff like that to try to cover their tracks. But to me, Wiseman, I'm a huge wingspan guy, 7'6" wingspan. I like that. 7'1", can run the floor like a deer. He has no problems walking or running in his gait. He's athletic. He has the potential to be a really good shot blocker. There's some shooting potential there. It kind of looks like half kind of looks like Chris Bosh's shooting form.
It does.
I've always shot it, and I kind of always liked Chris Bosh's shooting form. I think I'm still not sure if he could project out the 3-point range, but he's a good free throw shooter, or at least not 60-50%. So free throw is usually a good indicator if you can shoot. Shoot, basically extend your range. He obviously he has other stuff to clean up on. He's not really a good passer. He can't see the floor well. He's not a good decision maker. And that's why I think if Wiseman goes to somebody like the Warriors, I think he'll immediately just recognize his potential just by fact that they're going to have him in a limited role, because he's a good lob threat. He's going to have great players around him. I'm pretty sure Draymond's going to yell at him every single practice. And just they can confine Wiseman's role and bring out his strengths while working on his weaknesses. I think Wiseman is the type of big, like I was mentioning earlier, where he could fall into that category of like a specialist or maybe a special big man. But to me, it looks like he could fall into either one, or he could be Hasheem Thabeet and not work out at all. But I don't think he is either. But you never know. You never know. There's a chance of that happening. But I think Wiseman is obviously more skilled, has more of a feel for the game than Thabeet did.
I think the thing is with Wiseman, his floor is basically what the Warriors do now with their big men.
I agree, 100%.
Right now, he can come in and he could never grow and never develop, and he'll still be a JaVale McGee, Marcus Chris kind of like starting center that can just run the floor, rebound.
Like, I don't see why he can't be better in that role than, like you said, McGee or Kevon Looney was during those championship runs where they just needed a patchwork center.
The only real question is, like, especially with the way the cap is now, do you want to pay Wiseman to do that?
Exactly. And that's
so when you can get a McGee or a Dwight for way cheaper.
And that's where the advantage of having a rookie contract would be great for the Warriors too, because they could kind of evaluate and see that, right? Like they can help him develop the first few years of his career, and by the end of his rookie contract, they could decide whether he's worth that or not. But that is the big question, because then you would potentially let a number 2 pick walk out if Wiseman isn't what you thought he was going to be. But I like the skills. I like the potential skill set he projects to have in the NBA. I like the physical features. He's just an athletic freak, and I just like the two-way potential. The question is, whether it seems like he's a good kid. He has a good work ethic, so I have no doubt he has a desire to get better. I just want to know. I just want to see. I guess that's all it is at the end of this day, right? This draft is really weird. Nobody knows where anybody's going to go. I feel like any pick could happen in the first 10, and I wouldn't be shocked. In the lottery, like, anything could happen, and I wouldn't be shocked necessarily. I think this is the good time for teams to just make decisions and be comfortable. Yeah, it'd be more comfortable taking a shot in the dark or just believing in the prospect that you believe in. Because, people will have different opinions. You can't just go off of mock drafts online and stuff like that. People are going to have dissenting opinions. How much do you believe in it? This is the draft maybe where you could just, pound your fist on the table and be like, yes, this guy.
Yeah. So, again, I think we're pretty aligned on Wiseman. Anthony Edwards. So, I think I brought this up to you the other day. We've been hearing for years, and everyone's kind of known for years that the influence of AAU has sort of been a detriment to the NBA and to the development of prospects because of the hero ball and because of like how AAU is sort of how they run.
The systems ran, yeah.
Right. So I think this is the first draft where we're really seeing it come to fruition and seeing it materialize. And it's also the first draft where I think kids have grown up with the Steph Curry and
James Harden era
and Dame Lillard kind of stuff, where every single person, almost to a T, every single person in this draft has really terrible shot selection, like atrocious shot selection, some of the worst I've ever seen. And it's pretty atrocious. And Anthony Edwards, I think, falls into that just as much as everyone else does. So a lot of people keep bringing up the Oladipo comparison with him, and obviously, he. Both coached by Tom Crean. They're both athletic as hell. They're not great shooters. But to me...
solid handle, solid feel for the game.
Right. To me, the thing is with Oladipo's work ethic was never a question. That dude worked hard and was... like, you knew
some
the
of his work ethic
there.
Stories were legendary, like sleeping in the high school gym and stuff, mopping up the floors and stuff like that before practice and all that. Like, the dude is a worker.
Right. And so... maybe it's unfair because Anthony Edwards is the I think the youngest person in this draft, but like we just haven't heard these we've heard somewhat of the opposite stories about him, where he's just not a worker.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, the shooting stuff, where Oladipo at least took smart shots. He wasn't a great shooter, but he took smart shots. Edwards shot 29% from 3 in college on a terrible Georgia team. But again, when you watch highlights, he's taking a lot of these from like Steph Curry range, where he doesn't have that kind of range.
Now, I do. How much do you think of that is? How much do you think is the fact that he played on a bad Georgia team? Because if you look at Georgia's record compared to past years, like it was an improvement. Like Georgia has been a historically bad basketball program, and Anthony Edwards was really the only guy on there. I get what you're saying, but I do wonder how much do you think of it is the fact that he had a bad team around him?
don't know. See, to me, it's the same thing as the same questions we had as with Ben Simmons at LSU. Where, remember, Ben Simmons at LSU,
his defensive effort was atrocious and called into question all the time.
right? But to me, the thing was with Ben Simmons was he is a playmaker by heart. That's what he's trying to do at almost every possession.
And he's a rebounder, so like his effort was never in question either to me. So it was just bad team.
Right. So to me, it's the thing of with Ben Simmons, the question was, okay, well, he should be able to carry this team. But when you have a playmaker with nothing around you, it's hard to kind of do that. To me, Edwards is a alpha dog scorer and someone that can just get buckets. So when you have that kind of guy, it's easier for that guy to carry than a playmaker. Because in college, you're trying to make plays. And if you're the type of athlete and the type of player that Edwards is, you should be able to, on most nights, beat your man and score at will.
Yeah.
And again, I think that comes down to shot selection. I mean, he's a decent free throw shooter. He shoots 77% from the line. So again, that's usually the better metric for determining 3-point or shooting ability in general, but also it translates better to 3-point shooting in the NBA than 3-point shooting in college does. Don't ask. It's a weird thing.
Yep.
But yeah, like I just don't think he made the most of his tools in college. Because again, we saw, Durant in, again, different time, but Durant and Beasley carry their college teams to the tournament and have solid runs in March Madness.
And if he's the top flight prospect, he should be able to at least lift his team a little bit better. Because like he's a solid passer, but I think it's more basic reads than anything.
Sure.
I don't think he's like a special passer by any means, but maybe, I guess, to play a little devil's advocate, because I am personally not a fan of Anthony Edwards. There's stuff to like about him. I definitely like his athleticism. I think if the knock on him has been inconsistency on defense and lack of effort, or inconsistency with his effort on defense also. So I think that goes back to what you're saying about, his work ethic and attentiveness. Maybe he grows up and matures, because again, these are teenagers, but I do think that, because when you watch like I think there was a tournament game at the start of the college season, he had like 7 threes, and he was just, he in terms of a score, like when he's on, it looks really, really good. And the problem is, can you channel that and pull that out of him consistently? The shot selection is very troublesome. Even though he shot 77% from the free throw line, I still kind of don't like his shot. No. I don't know what it is. Like I've dealt with some unorthodox shots. I was caping for Lonzo Ball and his unorthodox form. I was like, hey, if it goes in, it goes in. Like,
same here. We both love Lonzo Ball, and we'll get to LaMelo in a second. But
I can't wait to talk about LaMelo. But I just see Anthony Edwards' shot. Like sometimes he'll kick his leg out too. Like it's just the base is inconsistent. The base of his shot is inconsistent. I don't like the little slight hesitation he has when he rises up to the shot, like the transfer to the shot. If you catch what I'm saying, I do think there are some things to like, though. Like, he's very athletic. He can break his man off the dribble. Those are valuable in today's NBA. And trust me, as someone who watches a team that has like literally one ball handler, one who can't shoot, it's refreshing to see somebody like just break his man down off the dribble. And while it might not be the most advanced handle, it might not have the most wiggle, he blows by people with his athleticism, and he has the strength to finish over defenders. So there's stuff to like about Anthony Edwards, but top prospect and franchise changing player, I'm telling you, I'm going to have to see better shot selection. I'm going to have to see better, improvement and progress in terms of playmaking and passing. And also, quite frankly, I just want to see more consistency in terms of being attentive on the defensive end of the floor. I think he has some great on-ball potential. Off-ball, I think, is arguably more important in today's NBA until you get to the playoffs, of course, where isolation scoring is still king. But there's just a lot that there's a lot left to be desired about Anthony Edwards for sure.
No, totally agree with everything you said. And all right, let's get into this. Let's get into LaMelo Ball because I think he's the most I think he's the most interesting prospect in this draft.
Okay, so this is also the draft not only for role players for me, but unique players, like players that don't necessarily fit the mold of a normal player, right? Like
there's nothing like LaMelo Ball in the NBA right now.
There is nothing. Yeah, no, like his shooting form, like his brother, is kind of weird. It's inconsistent.
It's better.
It's better. It's better. His handle is better too. And I think while Lonzo is the better defender, obviously, and he was in college, I think LaMelo has that IQ and the length, and just I think he could be a really solid defender that can make defensive plays with his IQ. And I just think like Lonzo Ball, I think he was touted as a lottery pick for the wrong reasons. I think to me, he was a lottery pick because I just loved how unique the package was, right? He was 6'6". He was a good passer. He was
a great passer.
Yeah, sorry. I undersold it. Great passer. Transition, awesome. Off ball, he's smart. He can cut. He knows when to cut. He understands angles. He can finish lob dunks. And I see a lot of this with LaMelo, but I see him more effective in the half court than Lonzo, because I think LaMelo can get to his spots easier because his handle is so much more advanced. Lonzo, to me, doesn't have wiggle in his handle, or it's not Lonzo, he has a solid first step, but it's not explosive. He's more of a straight line driver. LaMelo knows how to get to his spots, and and that's where his passing really shines, because he can play off of that just by getting to his spots, breaking his man down off the dribble, running pick and roll. And now, of course, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about Anthony Edwards. The shot selection is atrocious. And
it's worse than Anthony Edwards. To me, LaMelo has the worst selection in the draft.
Yeah, like going all the way back to his days at Chino Hills. Like remember when that first viral video dropped where LaMelo was like pulling up from half court in his high school games, I was like, okay, like I understand like the hype and stuff. I'm all about being hype, but like this is really atrocious.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
This is really bad shot selection. I imagine if there's one thing that the Ball family has shown us, some of the few positives that the Ball family has showed us, letting us into their lives, is that we got to see how much the Ball kids love basketball and
absolutely
how much they work at it. So that's why also I will never give up on Lonzo, because I know this dude cares about getting better. Like the guy completely overhauled his shooting form and shot 37% from three this year. Like this past season,
and the stigma is always going to stick with him. I don't think people give him the credit he deserves of improving his shooting.
Yeah, no.
And don't sell it short. He was terrible in the bubble.
He was a terrible shoot. Yeah, he was terrible in the bubble for sure. But pre-bubble, he was good. And
he was great. He was everything you wished he was.
I did a YouTube video on my Sly Hooper YouTube channel about the chemistry of Lonzo and Zion, and just Lonzo's numbers. Even before Zion joined the team, Lonzo's numbers started improving a lot. And then when Zion joined, it was just skyrocketed. So I imagine LaMelo Ball's work ethic is the same, and I think he'll do what he can to make sure his shot is, consistent. His shot selection will be better. I hope he'll listen to the coaches. Like, I just think I just love the unique package of Melo Ball. And I think if you're somebody like the Knicks, or maybe even the Suns, like I have a feeling Ball's going to drop in this draft. And I think the further he drops, I think teams are just going to be salivating to trade up for him, because I just think he's a unique player. And while he might not be a franchise quote unquote guard, like you think of like Steve Nash or, Jason Kidd or whatever, he is a lottery pick in the fact that he has a unique skill set that if you put the right players around him, it's just going to be something great to watch, because he's a brilliant playmaker.
Yeah, I think so. He's dropping. I've heard mainly due to his interviews. I've heard he hasn't really.
Yeah, I've heard he's
impressed
had
in interviews.
terrible interviews.
Right, and you can see that too with just the way that he is. He's a kind of an awkward kid and kind of a cocky kid, and so again, I totally understand where teams are wary about that. To me, he's the biggest. He has the lowest floor and the highest ceiling of anyone in this draft. Like he could either be an all-pro or he could be out of the league in like a couple of years. Like
Right.
It just depends. He could be the next Jimmer Fredette, where he's just too cocky to take any kind of coaching. And so, like, I could totally see that being the case. But again, I love what he brings to the table. The size can't be understated. To me, he's
6'7".
To me, it's kind of funny to me that him and Lonzo approach the game completely differently. Lonzo wants to play defense so he can get out and run. Mm-hmm. And he takes a lot of pride in his defense, and he gets after people, and he shows so much effort on the defensive end of the court to get out and run. Where LaMelo, he wants to slow it down. He wants to break down his defender. He wants to play half court offense and dribble and kind of play in the half court. And it's so weird.
Yeah, it's really weird to watch because they're great passers, but they're great passers in different ways. Because I think in the half court, Lonzo is more of a quick passer. Like he'll move, he's a ball mover. He'll move the ball. Like he'll move the ball to the next man. If he'll see the next guy open and ahead of the defensive rotation and just quickly swing it. Melo, like you said, he's more in the half court pick and roll, slow it down, get the defender on his back hip, and then find openings and creases to get easy baskets for his teammates. It's very different approaches, but it's similar but different. Which is kind of an oxymoron in itself, but I definitely see what you're saying with that.
So interesting how Lonzo is so unaggressive on offense and aggressive on defense, where LaMelo is hyper aggressive on offense and just passive on defense. It's so weird. And to think they grew up in the same house too, and had the same coaches, like it's so weird to me that they ended up on two completely different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic. But I would definitely take a flyer on LaMelo Ball. I can deal with the dad drama and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I could see him going 3 to Charlotte if they, again, going back to the thing that I was going to bring up. If they don't like Rozier or if they don't think Devontae Graham is a long-term option, like depending on how they feel about those prospects, I could see him going to Charlotte.
I would take LaMelo Ball and start him over Rozier. I'm not the biggest Rozier fan. Even though he had a decent year with Charlotte, and if there's any stray Hornet fans listening to this podcast on just in passing, like we're not trashing your team or anything like that. I just don't think Terry Rozier is a good player to give that type of contract to, even if he had a decent year. I like a backcourt of Melo Ball. I like to see what you'd have with a LaMelo Ball and a Devontae Graham backcourt. While defensively, you're going to allow 1 million points per game. You're Charlotte. You need to have some flair and you need to, 1, put fans in seats, but 2, if LaMelo Ball is the offensive player, the high ceiling offensive player we think he has, while he also has a low floor, then why not explore that? Or, try out or see what a Graham Ball backcourt looks like, because then you have other good young players on that team like PJ Washington. I'm starting to come around on Miles Bridges. I like that kid's attitude a lot. Actually, his demeanor is very refreshing. So I think Ball's definitely. See, me and you are on the same wavelength about Ball. Like I love Lonzo Ball. I love LaMelo Ball, and I just think
the thing with Lonzo is Lonzo's a very humble and very humble and very like, when you talk to him, you can tell like this kid gets it, and he's an adult and he's professional and he's mature. You don't get that from LaMelo.
Yeah, they're completely polar opposites, but somehow have some of the same qualities.
Yeah, so like I believe in him, but I could see it going really badly, really quickly.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, who are some of your favorite prospects from this draft? Like, obviously, we talked about the big guys, right? We talked about Edwards, Ball, and Wiseman. I have a few players on my list. Don't know how much we'll get into it time wise, but I just want to know. I just want to know off cuff. What are you feeling? Who are some of your prospects you're very intrigued by?
So I do like Deni Avdija.
He was on my list.
So a lot of people keep comparing him to Danilo Gallinari, and I think it's just because he's European and he has like that long, lanky frame.
I say
he's more Manu Ginobili. To me, he's Manu Ginobili. Really? Where he's a solid shooter. He's not a great one. He has good form. He can knock down shots, but he's not great. He's better shooting off the dribble than he is catch and shoot. But he's very fluid. He's very instinctive. He gets to the basket really well. He's great footwork towards the basket. He plays very instinctive, and he's very, very smart, and he understands how to cut. He understands how to move without the ball.
Solid playmaker. I love his game.
Absolutely. I think he's a special kind of role player guy. I think he is going to be in the league. I don't know if he's going to be a starter, but I know he's going to be in the league for a while.
So Deni Avdija he's a player that I look at. I see Hedo Turkoglu and
I don't see the shoot. I don't see the shooting though.
I like the shot. His percentage might be low, but I think his percentage might be low, and I know he's a bad free throw shooter. But when he has that set shot going, it's really comfortable. He obviously, the form loses itself a little bit when he's on the move. But I just see a playmaking 4/3 with size and handle, and just a smart basketball player. Yeah. And somebody that I see like a Hedo Turkoglu or a Bogdan Bogdanovic that can operate as kind of like a secondary hub of an offense, not a secondary scorer or a secondary playmaker, a secondary hub that can do a little bit of everything. Right now he's kind of competent at all of these things and not good or great in one area. So he has
I think he's a great cutter. I think he's a fantastic he moves without the ball.
Okay, yeah.
Like you can ask for more from him off the ball.
That's true, off the ball. But I'm talking about for the role of having the ball in his hands as kind of like a secondary hub.
Sure.
Like he's competent at everything, but I want to see him improve and be good in some areas. I'd also like to see him improve his off the dribble shooting a little bit, because I think the standstill form, like I mentioned, is fine. I want to see him
doesn't make a lot of them.
Yeah, and I just want to see him improve his free throw shooting a little bit. But I look at somebody like him, like I think a lot of people have him mocked to the Bulls. I think that's a pick that makes sense, because the Bulls have about 10,000 scoring guards and like 5,000 bigs, and they kind of need somebody who is not a unitasker, but can play. You know, he could play the 3 or the 4. He'll probably get hunted on defense, especially early on in his career. He'll definitely get hunted, but he's somebody that could, make smart decisions, is somebody that could play off the ball to Zach LaVine or Kobe White, whatever the new Bulls front office decides to do with Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter. I would personally, honestly, if I were the Bulls, I would try to keep this team together and see what they could do under new coaching, because I think Jim Boylan was one of the worst coaches I've ever seen in my life. And so I want to see how a Markkanen Carter Jr. front court will work out. But Deni Avdija is somebody who can kind of grease the wheels on offense.
I think he can tie them all together.
Yeah, yes, he's somebody he's like the rug in the Big Lebowski. It ties the room together, right? And
right.
And I think somebody like Avdija is somebody who, like I was saying, this draft has a lot of role players and players that could do multiple things. I think Avdija falls into one of those. I also, under this same category, I know he's a little bit of more of a boomer bust prospect, but I like Aleksej Pokusevski.
Oh, I have him here too. So he was next on my list.
This is going to be hilarious if we end up with the same damn list. But
he's 7 feet tall. He has a 7'3" wingspan. He's a good shooter. He has good feet.
Good handle. Good playmaker.
He's smooth. The only issue with him is that he is very skinny.
He is very, very skinny. And by the way, like, this is definitely, mostly this is me. I've watched, clips and a few I've watched I think I've watched a few games of him. Like I've tried to dig up stuff on YouTube about him and
Yeah,
stuff.
he's someone that I
But
binged recently.
this is definitely me falling in love with the package that he showed. Like he's the physical features. He's a playmaker, ball handler. He has the potential to be a really, really good shooter, I think. And the problem is he just needs to add weight. And he's just somebody I would take a huge swing on because he's another
he's just really
player.
interesting.
Yeah, he's a really interesting player. He's also a big, and I think playmaking and shooting from that position is very effective. And he's a ball handler also. Like, there's just a lot to like about this guy. I like some of the comparisons of like a Lamar Odom. Detless Shrimp is too easy. It's like comparing.
So to me, he like the ceiling is like the Lamar Odom, Kristaps Porzingis kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The bottom to me, his bottom is like Dragan Bender.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%. But you look at him and you watch tape of him and you're just like, whoa, like okay, like there's something here, and like you could see him like
he's way more fluid than a guy his size should be.
Exactly, and has a way better handle than what a guy his size should be. Like, I just like the complete package. And I'm also happy that I pronounced his name correctly on this podcast.
Pokusevski?
Yeah, Pokusevski. I even did the little, spell out and hyphen thing.
so the last guy on my list, I had three guys, and so one was Avdija, one was Pokusevski, and then I have, and this is the one that I fight for the most, is Cole Anthony.
Oh, okay, you like Cole Anthony. All right,
so,
make the case for him. He's not on my list.
So Cole Anthony for a long time was the Zion of this draft class. Like,
yeah, he was the number one recruit, right?
Forever.
Yeah, for a long time.
Since he was like a middle school kid, like everyone knew, like he had highlights, he had AAU highlights, like this kid was supposed to be a monster. Then he was the MVP of the All-American, the McDonald's All-American game. He was the MVP of the Jordan Brand Classic game. He was the MVP of the Nike Hoop Summit. So the only bad kind of thing on his resume is his 1 year at North Carolina. And so to me, it's more of a thing of North Carolina because he's a talented 3-level scorer. He can shoot, he can drive to the basket. He's a good mid-range game. He reminds me a lot of Kemba Walker. He has a lot of that kind of shiftiness. He's a great ball handler. He's fast. He's quick. He has a lot of. He's really active on both ends of the court too. So he has active hands. He's a great on and off ball. The other thing, he's not a great playmaker. But and he does have the shot selection thing that we were talking about before, but who doesn't in this draft class? The thing is that he is the best. He is at his best when he's in the fast break, getting out there in transition, running, and he didn't get a chance to do that at North Carolina because of the Roy Williams offense. They like to play in the half court in North Carolina, and so you could see it in his game where he didn't look comfortable. He was playing with a lot of players that he had. North Carolina ran two centers the entire time, so the space was very congested.
Yeah,
he didn't have a lot of room to operate.
He did look out of place at times in the times I watched him. I also like his I do like his the scoring potential and the shooting package that he has too. I don't like it's amazing how like players like Cole Anthony, they're highly respected, they're top recruits and stuff like that. And then they go to a prestigious program like, say, Duke before Mike Krzyzewski started going with the one and done, or, North Carolina now, and they're kind of just put in a situation where the player has to adjust to the system and you don't adjust the system to the player.
I think Krzyzewski's gotten a lot better at that.
That's why I said one and done Krzyzewski when he started dipping into the forbidden fruit. But I do get what you're saying.
Because think about it, in the NBA, the floor is not going to be that congested, and it's a lot faster than he'd play. Like the NBA plays to all of his strengths.
100%. And if he say like, I think a lot of big boards have him like mid first round, late first round, like that could be like that could be a potential steal for any of the late lottery teams, and that he's the type of player where it's like, wow, this guy keeps on falling and falling and falling, and then like next thing you know, he falls to like the Dallas Mavericks or the Nets or the Heat or somebody like that, or even the Sixers. That I would take Cole Anthony on the Sixers, honestly, just because he's somebody who's a good ball handler, good shooter, plays fast. He's somebody that could play next to Ben Simmons, because I've seen him mocked there a few times by some people. It's amazing how he might be like I said, he might be a byproduct of not having adjusted to playing in a system that's already established as opposed to having it built around him. So I definitely see where you're coming from on that one.
I think the thing too with Cole Anthony is
the Bucks could even take him.
Right. To me, right now, he could come in and be a Lou Williams type of guy to come off the bench and just give you minutes and score.
Yep.
The worry, I think, with him is that he comes in, he's Malik Monk.
Oh, I was very high on Malik Monk.
So was I. I thought Malik Monk, but the thing is that he hasn't translated either. But it's a similar type of thing where you're like, this guy's a talented scorer. But the thing I think Cole Anthony has the thing that Cole Anthony has over Malik Monk is the size.
Mm-hmm.
Because Cole Anthony is 6'3", 6'4", so he is a bigger guy. Malik Monk is, I think, 6 feet, 6 something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he has the size, and he has a little more stronger of a frame to be able to take that punishment and be able to drive to the basket and not die. So,
yep.
I feel so bad because Malik Monk tries to drive to the basket sometimes, and he just gets bullied around.
He just gets annihilated. He'll try to dunk on somebody, and it's just like, oh god.
And so he's turned into sort of the forced jump shooter, but you can tell that he's not comfortable doing that all the time.
Yeah.
But Cole Anthony, I think, can still take that punishment and be the 3-level scorer that we think he is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, he's the peak. He's Kemba Walker, and he can run your offense. The middle ground is okay. He's Lou Williams, or he's Malik Monk. Like either, and honestly, Malik Monk still isn't bad. I would still take Malik Monk as like my bench.
I would take a flyer on him if the Hornets were looking to move on from him for sure. Yeah, because I don't think that situation was great for him either, especially coming up behind Kemba Walker. And, now Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier are kind of cemented there, at least for, at least the next year or so. So, Cole Anthony, if the ceiling is Kemba Walker or the floor is Austin Rivers or Lou Williams, like in the middle, like that's a damn good pick in the late rounds, like the late teens, early 20s, right?
And to me, when we keep talking about a draft that is so uncertain and has so little kind of boom value in terms of big stars, taking a shot on a guy like Cole Anthony with his history, I think is a pretty safe kind of risk to take.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of cheat here because I want to talk about Tyrell Terry because he's on my list, but I'm going to my third guy. I want to get your thoughts on Tyrell Terry. So I'm gonna come up with a different third guy that I had on my list. I like Tyrese Haliburton a lot.
Okay,
and
I can see that.
And while he might not be the fastest, everybody says the comparison is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And you know what? I'm going to be the echo chamber too, because I 100% see that. I see the smoothness, the not rushing a beat faster than what he likes playing, long strides, good handle, supreme passer. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a really good playmaker. I think Ty Haliburton has some special qualities to his passing. Shot is wonky for sure, but it goes in. He's like a 40+% 3-point shooter, but he is somebody that if you're a contender down the line, like a 23-year-old, 24-year-old Ty Haliburton could definitely be one of the centerpieces of a contender to me, because he is somebody like I was saying in more the mold of Deni Avdija or somebody like that, somebody who can be a secondary hub of your offense So to keep the engine turning, to, in a football term, keep your offense on schedule, right?
Right.
He'll take pressure off your franchise player. He'll take pressure off of the other playmate or his other teammates. He'll make his teammates better. He is good in the pick and roll. He is good in the half court. While the explosiveness might not be there, little and little over the last few years, when I hear the term, like, the knock on Doncic was, oh, he's slow, right? He's slow. The guy knows how to get to his spots, right?
Right.
And he knows how to manipulate his strength. Haliburton himself, he needs to put on a little bit more, I think, but he understands angles. He knows how to use his body, and he just has this ability to see the play before it develops. And I look at that, and more so than an Anthony Edwards, who might be a supreme scorer, or a Cole Anthony, who might have the ceiling of a Kemba Walker and was in a, bad system that didn't really fit his game. I see Ty Haliburton as somebody who he could play anywhere because he's a really good shooter. I do wonder what his shot will look like off the dribble. He's definitely going to have to make some tweaks to his form, and not too much, because, like I said, if it goes in, it goes in. And if it goes in at a 40+% rate, I don't want you to change too much. Like, don't be Mikal Bridges or Markelle Fultz and just completely retool your shooting form when you don't need to. But there are definitely some footwork things I'd like to see him work out in the base of his jumper. But he is somebody who can do a lot of different things, and I love his game. I think he's an absolute lottery pick. He might not be the best player on a championship team, but he's going to be the damn important one. The guy that's like, oh, well, if the Warriors didn't have Andre Iguodala, who knows how many championships they would have won. That type of role player.
So I agree with you. I think on the offensive end of the court, I think the Andre Iguodala thing, Andre Iguodala is perfect. I think he's the opposite of Andre Iguodala, where offensively you're not worried about him at all. He creates so much, and he helps your offense flow so much offensively. I think the problem with him is defense, where he's a great off-ball defender because he is so intelligent and he has so much basketball IQ that he's able to make the right play and see them before they happen. The problem to me with him is
he's kind of stiff when
he's very stiff. He's extremely, and he's a guy that defenses are going to hunt.
Or
offenses are going to hunt. And the thing is,
100%,
you can't have him on the floor in crunch time, where I think you need his offense the most. And what
do you think his offense? Do you think his offense will be good enough to offset that? Because that's where I kind of think his skill set portends to have a more develop as he develops. I think his skill set and package portends him to have an offensive game where maybe he does get a little bit better in one-on-one defense, and maybe he knows how to, bend his hips and keep that low center of gravity a little bit. Maybe he becomes an okay, maybe below average one-on-one defender, but a smart off-ball defender. But his offense is so effective that you can justify keeping him on the court.
Sure, I could definitely see that happen. I think that's the only reason why I don't have him higher, is because a lot of the stuff that he needs to work on defense is not so much. It's things that he can work on, but it is just him. Like, he has
the physical limitations,
right? The physical limitations, and then just his high center of gravity. He has bad footwork on the defensive end. He doesn't slide his feet very well. Moving Latin. I don't care about burst or athleticism, but like his lateral movement is not very.
That's important for one-on-one defense,
right? His lateral movement is very, very poor.
Yeah,
he loses his man a lot. Fighting through screens or doing whatever he needs to. Like, he just does not stay with people.
Yep.
And especially in the NBA, if he's playing the 2 guard, he's going to have to stay with Steph or Clay.
Notice how I'm agreeing with you on all this stuff, that I am just falling head first into his offense.
I totally get it. Again, like, to me, it's just a concern, and it's, again,
for sure, it is a concern. Yes, I agree.
To me, it's the same thing. Again, if you want to switch to Tyrell Terry, it's the same thing that I have with Tyrell Terry
now.
Where, to me, Tyrell Terry, for anyone that doesn't know, Tyrell Terry is the is the Trae Young, Steph Curry, Dame Lillard of this draft.
And he is clearly the best shooter in this draft.
Yes.
Like it's very clear.
My note says he needs to work on just about everything other than shooting.
Okay, so I think he's a solid finisher around the basket when he gets there. I think he has a decent handle. Like, I think when people get lost with the Trae Young, Steph Curry comparisons is obviously they shoot really far, right? But there's more to Steph Curry's game. Steph Curry is one of the best ball handlers of all time. He is by far the greatest shooter ever, so I don't even think that comparison is fair.
In that mold. In that
mold for sure. Trae Young, unbelievable, top 5 passer in the NBA. Just a juggernaut offensively, but he's so small. He's an awful defender. I also, and back to Steph Curry, I've argued for years that I think he's actually a good defender. And I've had, this will be a story for another time when we do more podcast episodes, but I actually got into a drunk argument at a party one time at my friend's birthday party about Steph Curry. That's how much I stand Steph Curry. But I think Tyrell Terry falls somewhere in between those guys, right? Like, he's not Trae Young in terms of he's not going to. I looked at the usage rate. I think Tyrell Terry had a 24% usage rate at his lone season at Stanford. Trae Young's usage percentage, you want to take a guess at what that was in Oklahoma?
Gotta be like 60 something because he did everything.
It's not it might as well be, but it was like 37.1%. That's like James Harden levels of a usage rate in the NBA. Pretty much what Trae Young probably has now, to be honest. But Tyrell Terry is somebody who, like Steph, knows how to manipulate his shooting prowess.
He's a fantastic off ball.
Off ball. Like, Steph Curry's one of the best I have ever seen at moving without the ball and relocating, him and Clay. I think Tyrell Terry has a lot of that. I think Tyrell Terry is a good shooter off the dribble. And unlike with Trae Young, he shoots a lot of threes. I think Trae Young is a really, really good shooter. Tyrell Terry is a great shooter. And I think that range and being that elite at 3-point shooting is more game-changing. The Trae Young is game-changing because he could shoot from deep and he's a sublime playmaker, so that kind of goes hand in hand with the gravity he pulls. I think Tyrell Terry, his ability to pull gravity will come from the fact that he is such a dead-eye shooter from range that teams are just going to be scared of him, and that's why I love he's on my list of favorite prospects. But yes, there are concerns. He is small. Well, in college, he was 6'1". He's 6'3" now, but if he's still in the 170 range, like, no NBA player weighed under 170 last year. Like, he's gonna have to add on.
So I completely agree with you there. I love him in pick and roll. I think he is one of the best pick and roll players because he's one of the quickest players, like, on a turn. Like, as soon as he turns that corner, he's gone.
Yep.
But the thing is with him, again, he's, like you're saying, he's small. He doesn't have any kind of... He's a catch and shoot shooter. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have any kind of ability to create shots with his dribble that I've seen him do consistently. Like, there's no step back. There's no...
that's the next step for him. His off the dribble game. That's why he has flashes of it. And that's why I'm like, oh, we got to, like, if Daryl Morey could somehow... Sweet, you're going to hear a lot of Sixers and Lakers references, by the way, because I'm a Sixer fan, you're a Lakers fan. But if Daryl Morey could somehow swing a trade where he moves up a little bit as Tyrell Terry's draft, if Tyrell Terry is falling down the draft, if Daryl Morey could swing a trade to move up and take this guy, I'd be doing backflips for that, because he does need to improve his off the dribble game, but his shooting... It's so elite that I think that will just come with time.
Sure.
He also kind of has a nasty competitive streak. Like,
sure.
I see, like, it's layman's terms, but I watch games of him and he gives a shit. Like,
sure. I think that's great. I think the thing is that no matter how competitive you are, there's only so much you can do at 6'1". Or 6'2", whatever it is.
Well, now he's 6'3". He had a growth spurt.
Okay, there you go. But, like, again, there's only so much you can do, especially when he's 170. There's only so much you can do.
For sure.
He's going to get hunted. He's going to get, it just depends on, can he, again, like we were saying with Tyler Haliburton.
That's why you have a Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons to back you up.
Right. Can pieces around him, can you hide him a little? And can he, can he bulk up a little, and can he get bigger, and is his offense going to outweigh what his limitations are on defense?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see a pathway to where he becomes like, because the knock on Steph Curry for the longest time, and I hate to go back to the Steph Curry thing, but the knock on him was he was a terrible defender. And I think it's because we saw him go against LeBron so much and LeBron hunting him in the finals that people just thought he was a bad defender.
So
I've always argued he's a good defender because his off-ball defense is incredible. And while his one-on-one defense, he could get bullied and put under the basket. He tries. He has quick hands. Like he has a quick lightning release. So I think that translates well to the defensive end of the court. And you see Steph Curry getting strips that you don't expect, or big defensive plays you don't expect. So do you see Tyrell Terry? Do you see a path for Tyrell Terry that way on the defensive end?
Sure. I think Tyrell Terry has shown that he can, like you said, he gives a shit. Like, he shows a lot of effort, and he really battles. Like, he's the guy that, he ends up in a game with a lot of scratches, and you can tell he's diving and he's making plays. But so for me, I think Steph is a good defender. I don't think he's a great defender. I think he's a solid, serviceable defender. I think, to me, regardless of whether you try and regardless of whether you are showing effort, like, that doesn't matter if you're small.
The physical limitations
don't, like, I can give all the effort I want. If I can go out there, it doesn't make me a good defender.
Right.
If I don't have the tools to do that. And so I don't know if Tyrell Terry has the tools to do that. I think he could be a serviceable defender. I think he could be a solid defender. I think it's very rare that you get someone like I don't know, no, not like a Trae Young, like a Muggsy Bogues, right? Mm-hmm. Where he is small, but he is a defensive menace. I think like that kind of like overcoming
Fred VanVleet,
right? Or like where you're overcoming your physical limitations with different skills. I think I think that's very rare, and so I'm not going to put him in that category of like, I can see that happening.
That's fair.
But I think, I can see it where his offense is going to make up for that. I can see him in the Trae Young spot where he is not doing the same thing Trae Young's doing, but he is at that level where the defenses are so scared of him that, on offense, you're spending most of your offense trying to punish Tyrell Terry just so he doesn't hurt you on the offensive end, right?
Right. Yeah, and you focus too much on that.
Right, and then that's when other guys are able to capitalize and double and do it and kind of help protect him. Again, I think it depends on the system that he's in and around. Like, again, if he goes to the Sixers, I think that's a great situation for him to be in, because then you can pretty much play.
Trust me, the team does not lack in size.
So you can pretty much play zone at that point and just have him run up top, and then everyone else plays zone behind him like a box and one.
Yeah. With the zone everybody's been playing too. Like,
right.
Daryl Morey, get it done if you're listening to this podcast.
So I could totally see that happening. But I have him on the board. I'm not as high as him as you are. I think there's other guys. I would take Killian Hayes above him. I would take
for sure. Killian Hayes.
I'll take like Onyeka Okongwu over him. I think Okongwu's a solid option. I take Obi Toppin.
I know a lot of Cavs fans are hoping he drops to them, like that they get him. Yeah.
I prefer like Alex Okoro or Isaiah. Sorry, not Alex. Isaac Okoro over him. Like there's other guys in this draft that I think are more solid. But I think
would you take Kira Lewis Jr. over him?
It's hard to look at Alabama and say like
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just a situation at that point. Like, I don't know if he was in the right situation. I think that he
honestly might be another Colin Sexton, where I wasn't high on Sexton in the draft.
I'm still not high on Sexton.
I think he's honestly a lot better than I thought he would be. I think because his 3-point shot is coming around. He's still like he's improving as a defender. I think trying hard and
still-
making mean faces on defense is not how you play defense, but like he's improved in that area. He's a lot better than what I thought he would be. I'll just say that.
I'm still concerned that Colin Sexton doesn't know how to play basketball correctly.
Okay.
Like I think Colin Sexton has all the tools, but he just makes really bad decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're just like, I don't know if you know what to do with this. Like it's like if you gave a 5-year-old kid like that body and you're like, go play basketball, and he's like, great. And
oh my god.
Like maybe that's a little harsh, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like the movie Big, right? It's like like he wished upon a thing. And he's like, I want to be an NBA player, and he grew into Colin Sexton. And he's like, how do I play basketball? I don't know. And he's just trying to
instead of make me like Mike, it's make me like Colin. No.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, drive to the basket. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. You can't drive to the basket on 6 dudes. It doesn't work.
So, but I would see like I would take Tyrell Terry over Kira Lewis. RJ Hampton is another one. I would take Tyrell Terry over RJ Hampton. He just seems like another.
That one's close to me. I would have taken RJ Hampton.
Really?
I like the size. I just
see another Dante Exum, like guy who's turbo fast.
Like Dante Exum. Like his face is Dante Exum. He looks like Dante Exum.
Like somebody who's really fast and explosive and can get to the rim, right? Has decent feel, but really doesn't offer much else for me. Like he's not a good shooter. His footwork is inconsistent. Like,
yeah, I totally get where you're coming from.
His at rim finishing, like he could get to the rim, but he doesn't finish what. Like I don't see it with RJ Hampton personally.
So to me again, like it comes back to the thing of the unsure nature of this draft, and I think like if I'm taking a swing, I'm swinging for RJ Hampton because I know what Tyrell Terry is. Right?
Okay,
like,
yeah. If I'm going to use that argument for Pokusevski and things like that, RJ Hampton is another swing high prospect.
He's another project, right? Like he's another guy where it's like he needs, like if he fixes his shot, he is what we thought Dante Exum would have been, right? Like he is the same exact thing. I think to me the RJ Hampton thing, he has such a great wingspan. He's so long of a player, and he does have great footwork not in terms of his jump shot. He's
6'5", 6'7" wingspan.
And he has a fantastic body control, and he moves his feet really well. To me, that's the kind of guy where I go, okay, cool. I can see how you fit on both ends of the court. Where with Tyrell Terry, I have to make exceptions to my, like, regardless of whether he develops, I still have to make exceptions for him. Where RJ Hampton, I think, is more plug and play.
Right.
Like, cool. I know I can put you out here and you can fill this spot, and I don't have to worry too much.
Definitely,
about
I have the defense.
adjusting.
The defensive potential is there too. Like with Dante, like when Dante Exum was healthy, like remember that one series he had, and I think it was the 2018 playoffs against the Rockets. Like, and he defended James Harden really well for that one series, and then unfortunately injuries have really just done Dante Exum in. So it's not even fair to say he's a bust or anything, but I do see that with RJ Hampton also. Like you just see the explosive athleticism, and then just the size and the length, and you see the defensive upside there for sure. One more honorable mention, Seddiq Bey. I think all Villanova players should be taken in the first round from now. If you hear any Villanova players being scouted or mocked in the first round, take that seriously. Take them because they are well coached. They know the roles that they're in. You look at Seddiq Bey. I love Seddiq Bey. 6'10", is a really good team defender. He's a little too upright to be a one. He's kind of like Robert Covington in the sense that his one-on-one defense would be okay or average. Sometimes it could be good, but most of the times he's going to cap out at average because he has slow lateral foot speed. But he's a knockdown shooter, a very smart team defender, and just knows how to play. So you look at guys like Eric Paschal, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo had a great season for the Bucks this past season before completely falling apart in the playoffs. But Villanova players are well coached. And if you hear any more Villanova players in the next, as long as Jay Wright is there, in every year, in every draft, if you hear Villanova players being mocked in the first round, heed that advice is all I'm going to say.
Right. So in that same vein, when this is the last guy we'll bring up before you have to go, but the guy that I want to bring up in that same vein later in the draft for a contender is Cassius Winston.
Okay. All right. I was thinking about him too.
To me, again, same thing. If you have Michigan State seniors coached by Tom Izzo for 4 years, to me, that's a guy that can come in right away and contribute off the bench in some kind of role player capacity. Again, they're not going to be the biggest stars. You're not those kind of guys aren't the biggest stars. That's why they're seniors. Mm-hmm. But those are guys that can come in. To me, he can come in and be that stabilizing force off the bench with a young team or with a veteran team and sort of provide that energy and that spark and that intelligence off the bench.
Cassius Winston is the player that nerds will cite his on-off numbers and per 100s for his entire career, because I think he's an impact player also. I totally agree with you. Like, Tom Izzo has a history of sending players to the NBA, well coached, solid fundamentals, and Cassius Winston is somebody who could just contribute right away, run your offense, good shooter, kind of sets the table, and there's no holes in his game. Exactly.
And nothing's going to stand out and like jump off the table, but he is a kind of guy like a Fred VanVleet where you go, what does he do wrong? Nothing.
Yep.
And he's never going to hurt your team, and he's going to make, over the course of a season or even a playoff series or a game, is going to make a play or two that's going to win you the game or give you some kind of an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, that's the kind of guy that you're looking for later in the draft if you're a veteran team. If you're the Lakers, the Clippers, the Bucks, someone like that, that's the kind of guy that you'd want to pick up.
Yeah. That good comparison with Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, Yogi Ferrell is what I'm seeing on KOC's mock his big board right now, and those are also good comparisons. Cassius Winston is just somebody is a great second round pick. If you have a high second round pick, I would get him too.
Oh, actually, another Cassius too. Cassius Stanley. Looking at the big boards again, that's another guy to take a swing on, but I think lower in the draft.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
All right. Do you have anyone else you want to bring up?
I wanted to bring up Killian Hayes, but it seems like me and you are on the same level with Killian Hayes. I think he is a guy who has the most upside out of anybody in this draft. Besides, Wiseman and Ball, lefty gang, first of all. It's definitely, we were talking earlier about, the kids that are coming up now that grew up in the era of Steph and Harden. Killian Hayes is, when I say Harden, I am not saying he's James Harden. Obviously, we have people like that. That's just common sense. I'm just saying he has shades of it, where you see the step back, you see the craftiness and the, precise and the precise footwork of Euro stepping and getting to the rim. Killian Hayes relies on his left hand a lot, which kind of, scares. As somebody who watches Ben Simmons use his right hand literally all the time, especially in situations where a left-handed layup is usually the right call to go with, Killian Hayes does that with his left hand a lot. He relies on his left hand too much. I'd like to see him improve there, but good passer, great shooting potential, is in the mold of a Harden or a Manu Ginobili. And while he might not reach those heights, that's a skill set that is very attractive. And for me, I would put him right up there in the Wiseman Ball class in terms of the high prospects I would obviously take a swing for. Killian Hayes, I think, has a higher floor than those two, because I think he could be put in any situation and succeed, because I think he has the package to do it. But he's definitely in that tier for me.
Right. So I have him up there as well. I think the thing with Killian Hayes is he has every measurable you want. He's 6'5", he has 6'9" wingspan. He's not an outstanding athlete, but he's solid. He has a great feel, great passer. He has good touch. But I think the thing with me is that his percentages are pretty low. Again, he shoots 88% from free throw line. So like we keep saying, that's a better metric. But he shot 29% from three from college. The thing that I've noticed is he kind of has Lonzo Ball syndrome, where he picks up his dribble or he leaves his feet for seemingly no reason.
Yeah. Okay. I could see that.
I don't know what the like he'll jump up for a layup, but he won't go for a layup and he'll get stuck in the air and he'll get lost. That happens a lot.
I also see the criticism that he does too much, but I think honestly, if you were somebody who has the ball in his hands a lot, I don't think
that's a bad thing necessarily.
That's not a bad thing. No, like it's just a byproduct to me of having more usage. And I think as he gets older, he'll clean some of that stuff up and he'll figure out things that he can get away with in the NBA than he did in France. So he's a smart player, really good playmaker, really good, has great shooting potential. Like you cited his free throw percentage, but I do see a little bit of. I also seen the comparison to D'Angelo Russell. I might see that a tiny bit in the sense that they're lefty and that they get their shots off quickly in a weird way. I think the way D'Angelo gets his shot off and his release
is more shifty.
Has always been interesting to me. And I think Killian Hayes has that a little bit, but I do see more of the Manu Ginobili ridiculous playmaking. Like some of the passes he made overseas was just like, oh my goodness. Like, and then he has the step back, and he just needs to work on. There's just some stuff he needs to polish up for sure. But I like Killian Hayes a lot. Anywhere he falls in this draft, I think they're getting a good one. Like he's
going top 10 for sure.
I think if he falls to 8 and the Knicks get him, I think him and RJ Barrett, that becomes an interesting backcourt. Even though RJ Barrett, I think honestly, I'm still holding RJ Barrett stock. I just believe in the work ethic, and the situation obviously is not great. But if like Killian Hayes could come in and help out Barrett a little bit, I think that's an interesting backcourt for sure.
So, last question before we get out of here.
Yes,
you're the Knicks. You have 8. Killian Hayes and LaMelo Ball are still on the board.
No, don't do this.
What do you do?
Oh boy.
Obviously Killian Hayes is the smarter, safer choice, but LaMelo Ball has the potential to.
Ooh, man. I would. So my heart is telling me to go with LaMelo Ball, but if I'm trying to be logical and look at it from a Knicks perspective and a Knicks fans perspective, Killian Hayes would be the better choice because I don't think you can sell high potential to your fan base anymore. I think the goodwill is gone with that team.
Yeah.
Well, if it wasn't already gone, it's gone for sure, especially after the KD fiasco and them releasing a press release on July 1st saying that they were expressing their disappointment about not getting Kevin Durant pretty much. Like, I think the fan base has lost their trust with this team. So I don't think you could sell LaMelo Ball, especially, people will just automatically assume he's volatile because of his family and stuff like that, right, which sucks. But Killian Hayes to me would be the safer pick because I think he's a cleaner fit with RJ Barrett. I think because it's a cleaner fit with RJ Barrett, that could help them develop together more seamlessly. And so with LaMelo, like we said, he has the lowest floor in this draft. And if he's put in a bad situation like the Knicks, I'm scared. And I think I think Killian Hayes can succeed anywhere with his type of skill set. He obviously has to prove it and reach to that point, but I would take Killian Hayes.
All right. I totally agree with you. It's just I think I prefer LaMelo, but I think Killian Hayes is the safer option in a volatile situation like that. But it's the Knicks, so it means they'll take Obi Toppin.
Oh my god,
they need more power forwards. What are we talking about? Power forwards.
Hey, we have plenty of the Knicks and the Sixers probably have the most capital owned in power forwards in the NBA combined.
When the grit and grind comes back, they'll be ready. Awesome. All right, Jordan. Thank you for the talk. Thank you for the call. Thanks everyone for listening.
Man. I'm excited. Let me just say, I am excited to keep doing this. When you hit me up to start co-hosting the podcast, it was an easy decision. You're literally the first person I have ever had a civil agree to disagree debate about Allen Iverson with in my life. So I was like, okay. we'll probably litigate it again at some point, but I am very excited to keep this going. And yeah, thanks for in choosing me to embark on this adventure with you, I guess, to get a little sappy for a second.
No, absolutely. I'm super excited. So thank you for joining me, and thank everyone for listening. And we'll be back next week.
The B.O.B.